Hi, everyone. I wanted to welcome you to week two. We start module one today, and I'm going to go over each of the steps for that module. So let's go ahead and get into the course. So here's our home page for our course, and we're going to go ahead into the modules. You'll see that module one is organized in the same way as the pre-module. So we just completed that pre-module. So module one runs for 2 weeks. It's weeks 2 and week 3. And it starts with the module overview document, which I'll go over in a second here. It has a self-check, and it has 2 discussion posts as well as a journal entry. So you'll see it's very similar to our pre-module. The difference is the self-check is now based on content. So you'll see it's linked to our textbook and other media sources. And there are 2 discussion questions now, one for each of the weeks, as well as this journal entry, which I'll be making another video about. So be on the lookout for that second video. All right, so let's go ahead and go over this module one overview document. So you'll see module one is organized using this document, and there's a nice overview or introduction to our theme here. We'll be talking about the origins of culture and civilization. It's a 2-weeker, right? So it's gonna be weeks 2 and weeks 3. That is the same theme. And we'll be addressing these essential questions. So how are people of the past similar or the same as the people of today? What does it mean to be human? How has humanness remained unchanged from our humble beginnings to the global village in which we live today? And can we justify the idea that culture is humankind's greatest invention? What are the hallmarks of civilization? And then who defines these? We'll be looking at a handful of items and artifacts as well as some content. The first of these is the Makapansgat pebble. That's a difficult word to say, but it's perhaps the oldest artifact that we know of. The Woman of Willendorf, also known as the Venus of Willendorf, the Epic of Gilgamesh, earliest writing, which is cuneiform, and the 7 wonders of the ancient world. We'll also be looking at Jared Diamond's theory of geographic luck, specifically through domestication and river valley civilizations and agriculture. And lastly, we're looking at syncretic beliefs and blooded origins. A couple of notes. This is a humanities course, so it's not a history course. So you won't see timelines from me, or you won't see a lot of dates or those kinds of things, because that's not our goal. Our goal is broader than that. We're trying to find out what it means to be human, largely through our culture and through our artifacts. And again, it's not a history course, so we're not trying to understand the history of ourselves. We're trying to understand our culture of ourselves. Right? And so what that means is that I'm going to try to look at things like really ancient ideas or really ancient artifacts and show how that is still impacting decisions and lifestyle choices that we live today. A great for instance of this is that choices our ancestors made early on when they started farming are still impacting who we are now, right? We still use those farming techniques from thousands and thousands of years ago, and we still have diets linked to that farming practice, right? So those decisions made by ancient peoples are very real for our experience today. So that's our goal. Our goal is to see those connections and to see why studying these artifacts or studying these peoples matters in our context. Okay, to help with that, there's a handful of resources that I'd like you to look at. And the first is our textbook. We'll be reading chapters 1 and chapters 2. Now remember, our textbook is kind of odd. It's kind of like this hodgepodge book made up of other books. And that's by design in order to help try to keep the cost down on our text. So be sure you're reading about prehistory and civilization and Mesopotamia, because sometimes the chapters in the table of contents don't necessarily line up with the chapter numbers of the text. Just be careful of that. So we're looking at prehistory and civilization and Mesopotamia. And then I have a handful of multimedia links here, which are really great resources to help support our understanding and our learning. All right, so Alan Alda's The Human Spark is a PBS special. It's fantastic. It's sometimes difficult to find the actual special. So I have the PBS website, which kind of goes over what the special would have said. The Smithsonian provides a lot of great detail on the origins of humankind, as well as the origins of civilization. So you'll be able to see a handful of things through the Smithsonian's interactive kind of website. This Power of Race, this Power of Illusion, this is a really fantastic game, and it's designed to see how we understand race in our culture today. We'll actually revisit this one more time in Module 3. They kind of bookend each other. We'll also be looking heavily into Jared Diamond. He's a theorist that talks about how we got to be the people we are today, especially in the West. And then there's a handful of creation stories and ancient writings that help us understand where things like our religions, our philosophies, and even our economies and politics originate from. So again, we're seeing connections thousands and thousands of years ago still living and playing out in everyday society. And then lastly, the 7 wonders of the ancient world, which are just really these great, phenomenal works to take a look at. All right. So what's due? You'll have your 2 weekly discussions. You'll have your self-check, and then you'll have your journal. All right. So from this point, you're going to do a lot more kind of independent looking into the topics and required studies, and then trying to address those essential questions, and then mastering the tasks that kind of prove that you know them. If you want to wait for me, I'm going to make another video which gives you an overview of the journal. And so if you want some guidance on that, you might want to wait for that second video. Okay. We use a graphic organizer in Hume 102 to kind of outline all of our thinking. And so I use a Venn diagram for pretty much every single thing, everything we discuss in this class, specifically the journals, but also a lot of our major topics. And really what a Venn diagram does is it compares and contrasts, right? So we look for similarities between things, and we look for the differences between things. So for instance, in your journal, you'll be comparing and contrasting 2 different artifacts and trying to deduce information about those artifacts by putting them next to each other. But we can do the same thing with cultures, Western cultures and Eastern cultures, Western cultures and the indigenous cultures of the world, the different traditions within the indigenous peoples, the different traditions within the East. So you'll see we do a lot of comparing and contrasting. Okay, and I had mentioned this before, but the courses are designed like a thesis statement or like an argumentative paper. And so the thesis for 102 is by exploring culture and civilization, non-Western thought and traditions, and the power of people and place, we have the opportunity to live more than one lifetime through more than one experience. Okay, so that's my premise for this course, is that we're trying to understand as many different perspectives that are out there and live more than one life experience, live more than one of our own small world, and broaden our horizon. And so Module 1 is meant to help develop that, as is Module 2 and Module 3. They serve as my evidence for that thesis. Okay. One last comment I want to make before we wrap up here is this idea about late work. So I do accept late work for the journals and for the self-checks. I'm sorry, for the weekly discussions. So you can submit the weekly discussions and the journals late. That's different than the pre-module, which you couldn't do. So the weekly discussions in the journal is eligible to be turned in late. And here's what you have to do. To get full credit, you have to double the word count, right? So instead of like taking 10% down per week and a lot of those kinds of policies that you might see, my policy is very simple. If you don't turn it in on time, then just submit it in the next module and just double the word count, and it's worth full credit then. Largely that's because I think it's silly to kind of punish you for missing an assignment's deadline, and you have more time now. So if you have more time, you can go ahead and add more content and investigate the topics more thoroughly. So if you miss an assignment in Module 1, you can turn it in Module 2. If you miss an assignment in Module 2, you can turn that in Module 3, okay? And the only catch is you have to double the word count. You cannot do that for tests or quizzes, and that's just because those turn off in Canvas on their own, okay? All right, so that wraps up our overview of Module 1. Remember, you're looking at completing all this work in the next 2 weeks, so weeks 2 and week 3. If you've got questions, feel free to reach out. Good luck, and I look forward to looking through your assignments. Thanks, everyone.